Welcome, everyone, to our event today. I'm Ty Edwards. I am the director of the Kansas Studies Institute here at JCCC, and we are so excited to have you for our annual In Their Own Words Veterans Oral History event. So this year is really exciting because we partnered in a different way than we have in the past. We partnered with historian Jean Chavez, who deserves a round of applause. Let's do it. Yeah. I've had the great pleasure of working with Gene on numerous projects, and he's very successful at so many things. He's presented here on stuff we've used on Mexican baseball and Kansas history and all kinds of great stuff. So today I also want to thank Humanities Kansas. So Humanities Kansas has a Kansas Stories of the Vietnam War project, and this was part of that project. So Gene and I also were part of that. I helped with oral history on that. And we actually, Kenna Zumwalt, who I also want to thank today from our Veterans and Military Services office at JCCC, Kenna and I have been collaborating on Veterans Oral Histories here at JCCC since 2017 in the first version of Kansas Stories of the Vietnam War. So we are really excited to be doing this today. We're focusing on Mexican-American veterans, and many of them, as you can see, are here today. We're going to do this in terms of event in an order that, if you've seen our stuff before, is a little bit different. So today we're going to start with video clips from their oral histories in kind of a long video, and then after that, we're going to bring our veterans up, and we're going to do some questions and hopefully have time for some audience questions, okay? So this way you'll get to hear from all of the veterans, including some of those who were interviewed who are not here with us today. And unfortunately, two of the veterans that Gene interviewed have passed away since he interviewed them. So Ban Sentian and Rudy Mesa have both passed away, but we are going to actually hear from them as the first two speakers in the video today. So that's really exciting. And I should say everyone on the list is Vietnam era except Ben, who was a World War II vet. So this is also shows you the importance of recording these stories while we have the opportunity to do so. I also want to thank Video Services, Nick and Chris specifically, for helping edit the video that you're about to see. And again, so we'll do a video clip so you can hear from each of the veterans that were interviewed, and then we'll do a panel discussion afterwards. Gene, anything you want to add?
I just want to thank Dr. Ty Edwards for the ability to partner on this project. She's been doing veterans stories and histories for some time, and I felt that this would be an excellent match, and it really has been. And her video department has been outstanding, and we really want to shout out to Chris Horvat and his crew who've really done a great job with this. So thank you all, and thank you all for being here.
Yes. All right, Mike, we're ready to start the videos.
We come from a military family. My dad was in the Second World War over India, and he helped on the Burma Road. And I had an uncle that was in the Korean War, combat engineer in Korea. And then me and my brother Bob was in during Vietnam. And a lot of Hispanic people, Mexican people, Hispanic. They're very, very patriotic. A lot of the service members went in, and a lot of them has died. It's not correct. It's not right the way that, especially the World War II veterans were treated. You know, like the gentleman, the soldier in Texas that won the Medal of Honor. He couldn't even go and buy a beer. But there's all kinds of stories like that.
I spent about all of 6 months in boot camp and gunnery school. Then I went aboard the ship, the USS Thorn, and I spent the rest of my Navy time on it, so it was pretty close to 3 years. We were escorting convoys across to Europe and protecting them from the German submarines. The German submarines were active, I mean, we were in contact with him after a few days out at sea. We started making contact with him, and it was constant. Day and night, no sleep, ready to drop depth charges. Those depth charges were so strong, they would pick up our ship and put it up in the air, and pow, we come back down again. We were transferred to the Pacific, so we went to the Panama Canal and went to the Pacific, and we thought, oh my goodness, we went from hell right into heaven. It is beautiful, till we got attacked by the kamikazes. They said, what the hell is going on here? These people are crazy. They were plowing right into the big ships, the aircraft carriers mostly. Man, as they hit those aircraft carriers, you could see those guys jumping off of there, airplanes falling off everywhere. Oh my God. Those Japanese, they just plowed right into it.
I just happened to be walking around, and I was near the big post office there by the Union Station. I said, well, I walked up into the post office. There's all the recruiting offices, and there's the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines. You know, I go, well, I knew I didn't want to go into the Navy because I do have motion sickness. And I didn't want to go to the Air Force because I didn't think I had education. And so I just had a high school graduate. They don't want to mess with me. And I knew I didn't want to be a Marine as much as I did, but I go, no, if I go in the Marines, they're going to put me out there in front of the line before the Army. So I said, I'm going to go join the Army. And the guy asked me, when you ready to go? I go, what do you mean? Because after I got through signing up the enlistment paper, he was ready to ship me out that night. I go, wait a minute. I said, I haven't even told my folks what I'm doing. They don't even know what. He said, well, how much time do you need? I said, well, give me a week at least. I tell my folks. He said, okay, I'll give you a week, and I want your ass back here. I go, dang, he was so nice and polite to me when I'm signing up. Now you're cussing me out. Back then, we all had to sit around the table to eat dinner, you know. So everyone's talking and carried on, and my dad's looking at me like, you know, what's wrong with you? Usually, you know, talking or saying something. I go, well, I have something to say. He said, what's going on, mijo? I said, I'm going into the Army. I didn't tell him I signed up. That my dad and my mother think that I got my draft papers, but I just said, I'm going into the Army. I said, and I'm leaving the end of the week. And all of a sudden, my sisters and everybody, they're all shook up and they all start crying and carrying on.
When you're in boot camp, they just show you how to operate your rifle, your M1, M16, just how to use other types of weapons, and it was just a learning experience. And I enjoyed all that because, like I say, I always liked pistols and rifles, and when I came out as a sharpshooter, so I liked that. After boot camp, I was transferred to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which is artillery, basic 175 Hollisters and stuff. I had 2 days of training on the Hollisters, and myself and 3 other men were called out of our class, and we were told we were going to be moved to Pershing missile unit. And we didn't know why, but we got chosen to go into Pershing missiles. Which is a ballistic missile. We were trained there. I was given a secret clearance, just like the other 4 guys, and we trained and learned how to operate the the Pershing missile, which is still, I understand, still in operation, but it's not as large and as when we were, back in the 60s.
Nothing happened until April the 7th of 1972 when we got hit. That was my first action of a war. We weren't prepared. They caught us off guard. It was during the Vietnamization where communications, okay, they had our weapons locked up. They came from everywhere. It was a ground attack, motor attack. First rockets started hitting us, then the next thing you know, it was tracers all over the place. And luckily, I was up with a couple of guys, and we were just having a good night, overlooking the bay. When one of the motors hit, we jumped up. We thought that the first sergeant had got fragged. Then another, boom. Then another. The next thing you know is, all I remember is they taught us how to, the red alerts. First thing we would do, we would run, get our helmets, our flak jackets, then go get our weapons. Our barracks, we called it our hooch, okay? That was a nickname for barracks. And it was two-story. It was sandbagged all on both sides. By the time I hit it, the VC were already there shooting and throwing grenades. And I mean, it was probably this long as the bar here. Anyway, this guy named Ernie Hernandez, he was from San Antonio. He was there for 2 years. He was actually cooking for us. We were outside having a pretty good time. It was at probably about 9 or 10. And I worked on the midnight shift, but we were off. But he was cooking for us, and he was a sergeant E6, super nice guy. But I remember him telling me, go, go, go. And by the time I took off to hit, we have these bunkers. Okay, they're probably 3 by 4 and stacked with sandbags. By the time I hit the bunker, boom, and I went flying, knocked unconscious. By the time I woke up, I was on fire. And I looked around, and they kept on throwing the grenades, and I remember GIs coming in, so I crawled to the middle, tried to get away. It seemed like a lifetime. I started holding guys. I remember Joe Santos. Joe was a Portuguese from New Bedford, Massachusetts. Him and another friend of mine, we held each other, and we're like, I remember guys crying for the mother because they kept on throwing the grenades. Anyway, I couldn't take it anymore. So I took off. And as soon as I got to the end of as soon as I got at the end of our, I'm trying to think of the name of it, I can't, because I get emotional. It's a bunker. A VC was there, and I mean, he just started shooting up. And luckily, God was on my side. I went back, okay, crawled back in, grabbed the guys, started holding each other. Some guys were praying, and I mean, it was smoke. You couldn't see anything. All you saw was flashes. And I remember with the sandbags, you could see cracks, and I could see the VC running around. And I thought we were going to be a prisoner of war. And I remember, I can't remember his name, Puerto Rican guy from the Bronx. He come running in because he was in the bunker. And he come running in from the side that I was going to try to get out. So that kind of gave me the idea, maybe we could go. No, it's bad out there. It's bad out there. I said, well, I'm not going to stay here to die. So I took out and I hid between, because I wanted to get my weapon. I was going to die without a fight. So anyway, I jumped into the between the bunker and the barracks, which is probably about 2 feet. I bet I wasn't there a second, and here comes a VC, and he looked at me. He's about 5 or 10 feet away. He had his machine gun, AK-47. He had, he was full of grenades and everything. You could tell he was there to kill and commit suicide, to blow people up. And I don't know if it was the color of my skin or what, but he looked at me, and I think he was in shock. He didn't know if I was, because all I had was shorts and sandals on. Okay, because it used to be over 110, 120 degrees there at night. So anyway, I took back off, and all I saw was tracers ahead of me. So I jumped back in. Well, it seemed like a lifetime. All of a sudden, we start hearing choppers coming over, and you can hear stuff going on, and here comes the infantry, and then our sergeants come up and go, 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 and we start running out, and I start seeing dead bodies. It was a long night. I remember I couldn't hear. I was bleeding all over. My head was on fire. I was dizzy. Me and about 4 or 5 guys. They gave us our weapons, but they told us to stay there because we were injured. All the other, everybody was telling them to go to their post. We waited that night. Next night, they came, checked out who was injured. If we were well enough to walk, we helped police the area, police the dead. That next morning, they went on and had all the 5 dead bodies. The injured that were real bad, they sent them to the hospital. Myself, all they did was just patch me up because I couldn't hear and I was bleeding through my ears. They stacked the GIs that were killed. They got their boots out, their helmets, and their weapon, and they stacked them all. They played taps. Something I'll never forget. Anyway, that was my first experience of war.
Yeah, it was Vung Tau, Vietnam, which was a port. From there, we disembarked the troop ship and got into a smaller ship and started heading up the I believe it was a Mekong. I'm pretty sure it was a Mekong. The river. Yeah. The river, right. Heading towards Vung Tau, not Vung Tau, Dong Tam, which was a few clicks outside of Can Tho in the southeast part of Saigon. Southeast of Saigon, about 40 kilometers. On the way there, we saw this tornado that was ripping up the forest, this whirlwind. I said, "Oh my God, I'm back in Kansas City," because I remember the Raytown, or what was it? Ruskin Heights, the Ruskin Heights tornado of '59. So that was the beginning of my term in Nam. I was on a chopper, and I had mentioned to, I don't know who it was, that I had a cousin that was also in Vietnam at the same time I was, Philip Garcia. He was my second oldest in the family. I was very privileged because I'm the firstborn of the Garcia in my generation. And then Philip was the second, and we were both in Vietnam at the same time. But I could never talk to him because I never had radio communications. And then we were on a chopper, and I was able to pick him up on the radio on a chopper, and we had about a 2-minute conversation. That was happy. That was one of the happiest times in Vietnam that I had.
Christmas is coming up, and we made contact right before Christmas, so we did Christmas up in the field. Make a long story short, I finally, New Year's comes, same damn thing. Kara's supposed to be having a baby. It ain't like today, there's no cell phones, no, it was mail. So I don't know what's going on. And so my first sergeant came over and he said, there's what they call a Mars base. And he named a big town that was about 40 miles away. He said, you can call your wife, but it's not really a call, but it is. He says, they'll tell you about it when you get out there. He said, just get on a chopper and go. So I did. I got on a chopper and went. And sure enough, I get in there and there's a little shed and it said Mars outside. And so I get there and it's, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And there's a few guys in front of me and they tell you the the radio operators do this for free. They're great people for doing this. You have a phone on your end right here. We take that signal and send it to a ham operator. He might be in Taiwan, and then it goes to New Zealand, and then Midway Island, and then California, and all of this. You get 3 minutes. You only get 3 minutes, and you have, since you're going over the radio, you have to use ham radio code. So Roger, out, Wilco, that kind of stuff. So they call, and Karen's at her mom's house. So she was living with her at that time. Later, she lived with my mom for a while when I was there too. But so they get Karen on the phone, and I tell her, and they told her the rules. And I said, hi, honey, I love you, over. And then she says, hi, honey, I love you too, over. This is just too weird compared to today, right? But it was a blessing, right? Yeah. So she tells me that, yeah, she's late, but the doctor said, anytime now. You expect the next day or two would be, whatever. So we talked like that for about 3 minutes. Later that morning, I get on a helicopter to go back, and all of a sudden we get a call from the first sergeant. And he goes, line number 122, that's my name, line number 122. Wife gave birth to a healthy boy, 7 pounds 4 ounces. I was elated.
During the Vietnam era, when you were growing up, what had you heard about Vietnam?
Well, it was just a start. I mean, most of the newscast was talking about a pending conflict in Thailand, but it still not had been, it didn't start. And insofar as the public was concerned. However, when I was in Thailand, nobody knew we were there. I mean, they didn't want to acknowledge that U.S. troops were in that area. And so we were pretty much the first or second fleet of people to go to Vietnam era and Thailand, where I originally had my base camp.
So before going to overseas, where were you trained to be shipped to Thailand?
Well, my military job was, I went to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and had training as a military policeman. And from there, I was ordered to go to Thailand. My duties was to monitor the village that we were close by, because a lot of the American GIs that came back from an area in Laos or Vietnam, I guess you call it R&R.
Yeah.
And they would come there and they'd really break loose, and so we had quite a bit of thing we had to do. Is,
keep them in line.
right. But then also, it was part of my job to go and transport prisoners. We have them in Laos and Vietnam, and as a military policeman, I go there, get them, and bring them back.
And there were times when we landed in the middle of a firefight, which it's expected. But what I just couldn't understand is that here we are there, and the United States is still not acknowledging that this is happening. That bugged me.
I had been in Fort Hood like about a year, and I started noticing some of the soldiers coming back from Vietnam and coming into our company, and they looked, in my opinion, very depressed. They almost looked like if they needed someone to shake them and wake them up. And because I noticed that when it was time to go in the mornings to formation, they would just stay in their bunk. And the captain would tell us, hey, go get Sanchez, go get Lopez, and the soldiers that I saw traumatized were mostly Hispanic, and as a Hispanic, my second language is Spanish, and I was able to communicate with them in their language, and they kind of accepted me because when they were in the company, they kind of spaced out responsibility and authority. They didn't care whether they were being demoted as far as their rank, because some of them were like E6s and E5s, and by the time they ended up leaving, there were a few, they were demoted a couple of times because they weren't following the routine and the instructions of the captain. And I think they were just happy that they were alive and in the States and away from being in Vietnam, and post-traumatic stress is what I saw in them. And I didn't see the military providing any type of help, for them. I saw the discipline that they wanted in them, and they were ready to demote them, but they weren't ready to help them with their stress. And again, that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting observation. Probably not by you alone, and others probably felt that way as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that there were others that were there. Sometimes I would get with some of my friends, and we would just shake our heads, and there were three of us that got together and confronted our company commander and asked him, why aren't these guys getting any physical help? Why?
Mental health.
Yeah, and mental, exactly. And his response was, well, they're only going to be here a few weeks, and they'll go back to their towns and they'll be fine, So, it was dramatic.
Sure. Yeah.
You walk from flight line into the airport. So finally they brought the gate, and we started walking off, and of course there were protesters there. And why did they protest? as we were getting closer, it's like they were calling us dummies, You make dummies, where the hell did you go? You're stupid, You with baby killers, they were spitting at me. I said, what's going on? This is where it came from. Why are they treating us this way? The guys all of a sudden we got scared. What's going on? This is our own people, and they're telling us baby killers, and stupid, spitting on us. We didn't have no business over there, and I don't know, I also, as it was, I said, thanks a lot. This is like some more PTSD that I need, Oh, God, I couldn't handle that. Finally, it's like, I made it home. But that was the hard part, right there. I saw that some of them were giving up. And they said, well, this will take care of it. I don't have to worship about anything. You're strong. Don't look at it that way, So, when I came back here to California, it's like my friends were very receptive and everything. I walked them back and all that. And I started drinking, I started drinking liquor. Hey, you never drank liquor before me? Yes, I know. But I was just drinking and guzzling, And then, of course, I wanted to fight, and I started fighting with my friends, and then started with my older friends, my dad's friends, And so what's going on with me, man? These are my best friends, I don't understand, So it was all that gut feeling that I had that I put in, and I never let out. That's what they told me. Put it in and don't let it out, So I did, and then when I did drink, it came out, but it came out negative, and I was hiding. It took me about 4 years, maybe 5 years to find out who I really was. Because what I'm realizing, I knew that I didn't know that I had PTSD. And of course, I couldn't sleep. I had nightmares. And then they said, hey, we have meetings here for Vietnam veterans. It's every other Tuesday. We'd like for you to come. And I said, yes. So I went. My first meeting, I heard everybody talking. I could associate with it, And I said, that happened to me. But I didn't want to say nothing. Finally, after about 3 weeks, I finally spoke up, Man, I let it out. I was crying. Just everything came back out of me, and I was crying. I said, I'm sorry, guys. Don't worry about it. Everybody knows it, It's all right, Chris. It's all right. Let it out. So finally, I started letting loose, and I was talk a lot more. And I'm still on medication for PTSD.
He was drafted, and he was private first class. And the only reason he became staff sergeant is because after he went MIA, then he got upgraded to staff sergeant.
Oh, I see.
So I never had a chance to talk to him about that because he was already gone. I never got to see him again once he went to Vietnam. When I meet Vietnam veterans, I like to ask them questions, and some of them don't like to talk about it, and understandable, I understand, because they don't want to relive the past. But I just ask them not to be nosy, but I want to kind of know what my brother went through, put my boots on his boots, more or less, whatever. That, and I get a lot of support from the community in Omaha, Nebraska. They have done a lot for me, for my brother. And I don't know if you're familiar with freedom trees back then in Vietnam. So they planted a freedom tree in Bellevue, Nebraska. It's a Pawnee Elementary School. This one lady, she was back then. She was 12 years old, sixth grader. She heard about the freedom trees, and she was a Girl Scout. So she asked her scout leader if they can plant a tree there. And I don't know how my brother came about. I don't know if it was chose randomly or not, but they planted a freedom tree to honor my brother, pay tribute to my brother. And so now, since we don't have a grave, since he never made it back, we go every Memorial Day. We have a ceremony for my brother. So like freedom trees, they help me cope with that. So I do whatever I can to, keep his name alive. Because veterans, heroes are not dead unless you forget their names. You got to keep saying their names over and over and over again. Because you got to remember, they gave the ultimate, they gave the ultimate sacrifice to this beautiful country, and we need to honor that.
Okay, we're going to have our veterans come up now to the seats on the panel so we can transition. So let's give that a round of applause.
While they're coming, I'd like to introduce to the group Michael Saldivar. Michael has assisted me in many different ways, but he is the cinematographer for the interviews and other projects and programs that I've done. So let's give Michael a round of applause. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, so to get started, we're going to do a few questions, and I thought we might just go down the line here. So Frank, we might start with you. So I thought if you could share with us a little bit more about the work you did while you were in the service. So Frank, we got to hear a little bit about your first action in the war, but tell us a little bit more about the work you did in the war, and if possible, can we use a microphone? Anybody want to start? So we'll just go down the line. Yeah, it's on. It's on. There you go.
Tell you the truth, I didn't know I was going to be up here speaking. Anyway, I went over there as a Spec 4. I had top secret clearance. I was very fortunate. I worked in a communication center. I went to Cameron Bay. That's where we got hit. From there, I went up to Pleiku. Then it got worse for me. I went from being in a communication center to working in little, we called them, they were radio rigs. We called them rat rigs. Anyway, they were probably about, probably about 6 foot wide, 6 by 6. And they were dug 40, 50 feet underground. Had sandbags all over the place. Okay, I got sent up to Da Nang and Hue. I was pretty close to DMZ, Quang Tri province. And Da Nang, we called it Rocket City. They got hit quite a bit. Hue, I was very fortunate in a way. I worked, I actually had a general with a trailer that was dug way down, and my rat rig was right next to him. I had the opportunity to go and clean his trailer out. But anyway, I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate that I was
sure.
in infantry.
Here, let's switch to a better microphone. Here you go. There you go. Yeah, it's on.
Is it on? All right. I'm sorry. But I was very fortunate I was in infantry. I was very fortunate the fact that I was in communications. Met a lot of good people there. I basically sent and received messages, bombing messages, attacks for infantry. It was a pretty hard job because we received messages you could read, and I would get on the radio and I would actually hear on the radio people getting attacked. Okay, and it was really something else. I prayed every day while I was there, but I was very fortunate. After I left away, they sent me down to Plantation, Long Bend, where I was with the top brass just because of my security clearance. And I think I was sent there because it was closer to Saigon. It wasn't as bad down that way. And I think it was basically for rehabilitation because of the fact that I was up north. And I can't think of anything other than to say that communications is a veteran. I was the first signal brigade. All I can say is I was very fortunate because I'm here today. I was talking. I've seen guys blown away. I've held men in my arms, crying. I've heard voices of GIs crying for the mother. It was a pretty tough experience, and like I said, I'm just so happy. And I hated the military when I first went in. I was drafted out of college. I actually came here years ago when it first opened up, but because of the GI Bill. But my experiences over in Vietnam taught me a lot. It made me a man more than anything. But all I can say is I'm very fortunate to be here talking to everybody, and I'm glad that you're all here to honor us veterans, because I know when I came up, World War I, World War II, I had uncles, Korean War. I had family members that served, and I just looked up to them. But when I never thought that I was going to have to. And I'm sorry about this, but I still break up because of the fact that all the losses that you see. That was my first time, that interview we had, that was the first time I experienced war. There's several other times. Like I said again, just being in communications really helped me out. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Freddie.
Buenos días a todos. Yo soy Joe Frank Garcia. People in Kansas City call me Chato. The U.S. Army, being an enlisted man, being a soldier for the United States of America, was a watershed event for me. It is a chapter of a book that I am now writing called Chicano Nights. If it weren't for the United States Army and my participation as a soldier, I wouldn't be called Jose Francisco Garcia today. I had to look at my birth certificate to enlist, and guess what my name was? Jose Francisco Garcia. But from the fourth grade, from kindergarten, from Guadalupe School, through the time I enlisted, I was known as Joe Frank. So it radically changed my life.
And I can't tell you the benefits of the GI Bill. When I left the service, I was able to get a university degree, first at Penn Valley Community College, and then at UMKC. I got my degree in psychology because of the GI Bill. The nightmare of being in country continues to live in my head. It's forever there. I bled, but I refused to go after a Purple Heart because there was so much death and destruction all around me. How can a scratch on the head because of incoming makes me being honored when all I see is death and tragedy all around me? I refuse to go after a Purple Heart. Of course, now today I kind of said, oh my goodness, why didn't I? But that's the story of my life. I was a clerk, but I enlisted in the U.S. Army to be a pharmacist. 3 years, yes, Mr. Garcia, sent me to Fort Meade, Maryland. I got in trouble. That's a long story. I ended up at Fort Hood, Texas. 4 months later, I ended up on a troop ship, well, first on a train from Fort Hood with equipment to Oakland, where we got on an MSTS troop transport ship to Vung Tau, Vietnam. Arrived May 2nd, stayed in Dung Tam, which is a support base for the 9th Armored Infantry Division that the 69th Engineers was supporting. I was a production control clerk. I forget my MOS. I used to know at 51 or something. It took me 5 days to do a month's worth of work. The rest of my time, the 25 days in the month, I got into everybody's business. I would go on riverine patrols. I would get on choppers, on Chinooks. I was a free-for-all. I wasn't connected to any infantry, but I went out with them. I spent 3 days I just attached myself. I got sucked by leeches at night. I got soaked, had to jump into sandbars. Because I was the shortest guy around a couple of times, they gave me a handgun and I jumped into tunnels to see what was inside. I found a kitchen in one of them, and the rice was mounted like a mountain in one of the chambers. That the VC must have been there because the rice was still warm. I was able to talk to my cousin, and that is one of the sorrows of Vietnam. I had two cousins that served. One was a Marine, Kiko, Frank Garcia, and my older cousin, Pipe, Philip. They both survived as I did, but they committed slow suicide. And they didn't give him Ancient Orange. They didn't give him anything. They fought him. And they died. They died prematurely. They're both dead. I don't know how in the heck I survived. I'm a survivor, a West Sider. Lost my mom at 6. I've been on my own since I was 6 years old. So here again, Vietnam was just a chapter in my life. And for all of the pain and suffering that many of our veterans are still going through, that is because we love the United States of America. We are patriots, and nobody can tell us different. We were originally here. It is not us that are the aliens.
Well, I feel honored to be sitting here amongst these men. I was fortunate enough to be sent to Germany after my AIT and spent my full term over there. My brother was next to me, served in Vietnam. I get choked up just to hear these men. We all are patriots. We had 5 uncles serve in World War II. We lost a cousin in Vietnam. And basically my job was just to some Pershing missiles assignment. It was all new to me, different country, different food, a lot of beer. But I wish I could, I was proud to serve. Like Frank said, it was a growing up experience. I was a young man of 19, never left the West Side. I said, wow, what's going on? It's a culture shock. You wake up, you have your traditional Mexican breakfast, and you go down there and you get hash. What is hash? They call it SOS. SOS. Thank you. What the? I starved. And anyway, yeah. I just like to pass this on to my brother Tony.
I don't even know where to start, really.
Yeah, can you
Listen
get closer
all
to
these
you?
guys.
Get a little closer.
I said I don't even know where to start. Listen to all the guys here, but I was when I got to Vietnam, I thought I was going to get assigned to one of the infantry units, one of the fighting units, but they called out my name when we were all in formations. It was Tan Son Nhut Air Base, and they called out my name, and I thought they were going to call out one of the 7th Cavalry or the
little
Big
closer.
Red One. And anyway, they call out my name. They said Mac V, and I go, what the hell is Mac V? I thought it was going to be a fighting unit. I walked up to the sergeant. I go, you tell me I'm on with Mac V? He said, yeah. See that bus over there with all the wire around the windows? I go, yeah. You climb in there. Go in. You mean I'm not assigned to one of these fighting outfits? He goes, nope. Just climb into that bus. Turned out that Mac V was military assistant at observation, and I was like I was a runner, like a messenger, and I went to station on a base. We were stationed in the Chinese district of Saigon, and I used to have to. The first 3 months I was there, I was mostly sitting in bunkers with the sandbags and wire all around, and it was 24 hours in the bunker and then 24 hours off, and I think I was there on that for 3 months when the sergeant came out and said he needed a volunteer, and nobody looking around, so I put my hand out. I'll volunteer if I don't have to sit in that bunker anymore. So I said, what am I going to do? He said, I'm going to make you a runner. I said, what are you talking about? I said, well, you got these Jeeps over here, and you can pick anybody. When we sent you out, you just pick a guy, and he's going to be your shotgun rider. I go, what the hell am I going to do? I said, well, anytime there's a message that needs to be sent, you're the guy who's going to take it out to his bases. Mostly was Townsend and Everbait, and sometimes Long Bend. And I just get in the Jeep and grab somebody in a compound, and he'd be my shotgun rider. And I just hit the road and go down these roads and take the messages and whatever it is I had to do, and just head on back. And a couple of times I was out there, got shot at, and luckily I never got hit. Like you, I was having bullets going around. You're thinking, "Oh, this is it. It's gonna be the end." But I just put my foot on the gas and just kept going. I said, either I'm gonna get shot by a sniper or a bullet, or I'm gonna hit a road mine. But I guess God was on my side. But every time I did a run, I was lucky and never got hit. But my Jeep got hit a few times. But I was able to make the runs, and I'd come right back. And then when I was there during '68 when Tet broke out, and I happened to be in the bunker that we had. I wasn't on a base. We were like just a small little compound, and it wasn't not even. I don't even think there was 500 of us men there, and half of them were mostly officers, and then the other half were NCOs and anybody NCO, anybody E5 below, we're the ones that protected the compound. And so I was out there sitting in that bunker when Tet broke out. And talk about being scared. Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen, what's going on. You just sitting there. Always felt like a sitting duck. I didn't like the idea of being in there. But when it broke out, you could see the VC just running all around. They were popping out of. It was a Chinese district. It was all these little shacks made out of cardboard, tin, whatever, and some of these VC were popping out of these houses, and they were heading towards Tonsunet Air Base. The air base was about, I'd say, probably a good 10 miles down the road, but you could see the whole sky lighting up, and the helicopters and everything. And then when they were coming over to our way, I'm telling the sergeants and are behind me, and that these guys were heading our way. So when they started heading our way, then that's when we just started letting it go. Just shooting anything we could see move, and luckily, I didn't get hit. And all this stuff was dropping all over us. And then I sat in that bunker for 3 days before I got relieved. And I don't know what else to say. I'm starting to see the guys. Anyway, it was finally started to have it all clear. Because we wanted a base which is a compound, and we only had rations, so we had no mess hall. But we couldn't leave our compound for 3 months because they didn't feel it was safe enough to get out yet. But once they finally got the all clear, everybody that ran down to the CBs had a mess tent set up about, I'd say it was not even a quarter mile from us. We all ran down there to get something to eat. I think when I got in country, I was about 160 pounds, and the 3 months I was there, the 3 months I was there before they got the all clear, I lost about 20 pounds, and I was only 115 pounds, and my waist was only 29 inches around. Anyway, but I was just glad when it was over. But once it was over and we saw all the damage that was around, like you said, it was just bodies everywhere, just stacking them up. All these little shacks and all were blown up to hell because the helicopters were coming in, just dropping everything, just blowing things up all around us. You could feel the whole ground just shake. But anyway, that was my experience. I'm just glad I made it home safe.
Let me say, this is the first time I heard this story.
I know. I don't ever really talk about it. Yeah. Anyway, thank you.
Go ahead, Jose.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. My name is Jose Matias. Gotta forgive me, I choke a lot. Brother Staff Sergeant Manuel Fuentes. I was never in the military. I'm here to represent my brother. However, I did have 3 other brothers that were in the Army. I also had a nephew that was in Afghanistan. And like 2 years ago, 2 weeks before his 30th birthday, he died at home. About 8 months ago, I went to Vietnam, took one of my nephews with me. I went there hoping to find my brother. I went there searching for him. There was about 20 of us on a tour bus. 10 of them was Vietnam veterans. So what we did, we started from the north side, working our way to the south side. My brother was missing in action March 25, 1971 at Quan Tri, South Vietnam. So what we did, we started from the north and we would go to other places where all the other Vietnam veterans were fighting there when they were in Vietnam. They wanted to revisit that place, but at least this time it was peacetime. So I got to talk to every one of them. I was asking all kinds of questions because I wanted to know what to expect when we got to my brother's place. And about half of them got wounded, either got hit on the leg or the face, or the tour bus guide, he said he got shot in the mouth. He said, luckily my mouth was open because he went out the other side. We were, after a while, we got to know each other, and everybody was anticipating where my brother was, because they all knew where they were before, and they were alive. The only place that was mysterious was my brother, because I had no idea he was still missing in action. So, and we also went to other places, tourist places. It was beautiful. It was nice. So, finally, the last stop, we parked the bus at this dirt road. Because when my brother was fighting, it was on a hill, right? It looked more like a mountain. And on the other side was a land, but in between there was a dry creek, but now it's a lake. So we started walking, probably about 10 minutes. And then when we got there, the first thing I saw was the lake. Then I saw the mountain where he was fighting. Now there was 12 men in the platoon. They went scouting for enemies. They got ambushed. So they all started running back. And one of them got hit with a grenade. They threw a grenade at him. I think it was Rosano. He grabbed that grenade to throw it back. He blew in his face. Another one got hit on the back. And when something like that happens, the ones that made it back, they gotta write a report on what happened. So the last thing they saw, my brother got hit on the back of his foot, and he went to hide behind a rock. So when I went to Vietnam, we cannot go exactly to where he was last seen, because that area is restricted. They're still looking for remains, my brother and other Vietnam veterans. So we had to park it on this side of the lake. Plus that place is still full of Agent Orange. A lot of places in Vietnam still have Agent Orange. So there's a lot of, at least the Vietnam veterans that made it back, they got away from that. But the people that were still living there, they had to put up with it. A lot of them got cancer from that. So when we were there, we had a Chief Memorial, which I wasn't expecting. Me and my nephew, we made a cross for my brother, and he made another cross. And we had some lady, she was praying, and I got a couple hugs from everybody that I met there. And even though I did not find my brother, but I'm glad I got to see where he was last seen. And I'm not giving up. I'm still hoping, and I'm planning on going back again sooner or later. Thank you. God bless.
See that? Can you hear?
Testing,
Yeah,
testing.
It looks good. Go ahead.
I'm David Mendez, and I'm honored to be among these men here. When they say, some of them said they were lucky, well, you're looking at someone that's very lucky, because I didn't go to combat. I was drafted. Very surprised. September 1972. When I got the draft notice, I read it and I didn't understand it. So I went across the street to a neighbor named Alexander Madrigal. And we read it together, and he said, "Boy, you just got drafted." Yes. So I ended up doing my basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and then was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. And that's where I met a lot of the soldiers that came back from Vietnam, and I asked them, what was it like, you know? And I wish I hadn't. Because after I heard their stories, I felt guilty. And talk about heroes, whether they died or came back, they're all heroes, all of them. Everybody that served is a hero. I ended up, my job was driving for the Inspector General. And one day, when I drove a captain to the post exchange, and I parked my Jeep in the parking lot, and he got out and he went to buy whatever he needed to buy at the post exchange. I was relaxing. I was in my Jeep and had my legs cocked up, and I was looking across the parking, and there were government quarters, and I saw this sergeant trying to start his car by pouring gasoline down the carburetor. And he would pour gas down the carburetor and go inside and try to start it, and it ended up backfiring. And unbeknown to him, he didn't know that there was a flame inside that carburetor. And he came back out and picked up it was a bottle, and he came across and he poured more gas down the carburetor, and it ignited, and he dropped the gas bottle, and it broke, and it went all the way up his arm, and he was on fire. And I was watching him when he did it several times, and I was thinking, I bet he's going to drop that bottle of gas and it's going to create a fire. And what I was thinking actually happened. And so I had a fire extinguisher in my Jeep, and I grabbed it and I ran out there and I turned him off. And unbeknown to me, the captain was coming out of the post exchange, and he ran right behind me. I didn't know he was behind me, but I got a commendation for doing that, you know, and it made me relax a little bit about whether I could have done the heroic acts that these gentlemen did. But there's no comparison. I am really sad. I don't want to talk about politics, but I'm going to. It's sad what's going on with our country here. The United States, how honored are we to be here, to have the opportunity to make a good life. And I've had a good life. I gave 45 years of government service. When I got out of the military, I went to start working for the Department of Agriculture. And unbeknown to me, the best thing that happened to me was being drafted, because it gave me an opportunity to get a government job and work. And it's just sad what's going on with our politicians not passing the budget. That's all I got to say.
Okay. Joe?
Okay, I'm Joseph Padilla. Like a lot of these guys from the Kansas City area, when I went to report for service for active duty, I went down here to on Broadway down by downtown, and they give you another physical and that kind of stuff. They swear you in. And then we were supposed to go to Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri, and we waited and waited, and we were supposed to go by bus. But at that time, the Vietnam War was needing so many troops coming in, Fort Leonard Wood was completely full. So they said, what we're going to do, instead of getting on a bus, we're taking you down to the airport. TWA is going to take you to Fort Dix, New Jersey, which was pretty cool, because when we finally got to Fort Dix and got assigned a company, half of us from the Midwest here had one accent, and everybody else talked like Joyzy, you know? So that made things interesting right from the beginning. So we get through with basic training. I end up going down to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and the infantry school down there is called Tigerland, and it's pretty famous. So we went through our infantry training and all of that. And they sent us to Vietnam. You don't know which, you're a replacement, which sounds really good. You don't know which company you're going to be in and which division. They're just going to be, you're going to be a replacement. So we get there. They give us, since we're infantry, they gave us 4 more days of in-country training, which was helpful. And then they assign you to a unit. So 4th day is over, the morning comes, and here comes the helicopters to take you out in the jungle. And you're going, I'm a replacement. Wow. So it does not sound good. So anyhow, I get out there, and they assign me to the unit all the way down to the squad. And luckily, I had a guy that was a squad leader that was already famous down there. And normally what you did, unless there was some great big operation going on, which there's not that many of them, the wolfhounds, we usually worked in smaller groups. And you were basically trying to out guerrilla the guerrillas. So you worked in small groups in the jungle, hoping to gain an advantage on them, as just as they were trying to do with you, do to you. Whereas in the big operations, you've got tons of helicopters making noise and tanks and all of this stuff. We did that a couple times, but really what we did was that. Which reminds me of when you guys were talking about Agent Orange. At that time, we thought Agent Orange was sent from heaven, because the jungles in some of those places were so thick that they could hide in there. So they would spray that via helicopter or plane or whatever, and a week later you go back and all that's gone, and they had no place to hide. We didn't know what the effects were going to be down the road from Agent Orange. I've lost friends from it. The only thing that showed up on me is it was almost like little pimples on the top of my head. It was no big deal. But I have pictures of me in the water. We have creeks, and those things were full of Agent Orange from all the time. And I look at those pictures now, I'm going, why didn't I get it worse like some of these guys? You know, it's just amazing. Some areas they didn't even use Agent Orange. Other ones they use a lot of it. And I was in an area that they used a lot of. Then yeah, back to after the 4 days of in-country training, the helicopters picked us up. One thing we did not get trained in is helicopters. And Vietnam was a helicopter war for 90% of the people there. So when we got in the helicopters, it was crowded, and I was sitting on the side with my feet hanging over. And I'm still thinking about, damn, I'm a replacement. This doesn't sound good. So it takes off like this, and it was so cool. I just said, I love this view. And it kept getting higher, and I like that even more. It took me a minute later and going, oh yeah, I'm going to end up on the ground in the jungle. So anyhow, like I said, we would spend generally somewhere between 14 to 20 days on a mission, and they would take you back to a fire support base, which is cut out in the jungle, but they have, you know, bunkers and all this stuff, and it usually artillery units in there, but it's really cut out of the jungle, but it was relatively safe compared to being out in the jungle. The deal on here when I was trying to get a hold of my wife who was going to have the baby in that, we were at one of those, and as I said there, we went to go to that Mars station where they had the communications, where I got to talk to the wife on the phone. But mostly what we did, we were in the jungle. We went back to those little fire support bases. That's what we did most of the time. One time, I got a 3-day pass to Bong Tao. You guys were talking about Bong Tao. And that place had action and stuff, but for the most part, they had a beautiful beach. And I got to go there for 3 days. And I got pictures of me swimming, water skiing. That was a great change. Absolutely a great change. But then again, I didn't happen to be there on the night when those guys were getting rocketed or anything like that at all. So anyhow, that's all I have to say about this for now. And if anybody has questions later, are we going to have time to do that?
Yes. Yeah, we'll do.
Super.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Okay, well, hold on. So before we do that, first of all, let's give all of our veterans a round of applause. And before we finish up, our Veteran and Military Services wants to say a few things.
Thank you, Ty. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you to our veterans for being here and telling your stories. Thank you, Dr. Chavez, for all of your good work. In the military, there is a symbol called a challenge coin, and I want to tell all of you about it. These guys, I'm sure, know about what a challenge coin is, but let me get my glasses on here. Yeah, getting old. I guess it's actually a good thing, right? Okay, so they serve as tokens of recognition, camaraderie, representing pride, and shared experiences among those who possess them. And we have a challenge coin from Veteran Services, and that was designed by another student. We've had veteran students come through here for the last 15 years, adding on to what we do for veterans, and the challenge coin is one of those. And Gerardo Ruiz is our Veteran Services Coordinator, Marine Corps vet. And Gerardo is going to present the challenge coins to our veterans and our veterans brother.
No, gracias a ustedes.
Gracias.
Sí, gracias. Gracias. Muy amable.
Gracias, thank you.
All right, let's give another round of applause. Okay, so I know many students need to be getting on to their classes, so feel free if students need to move on to their classes. And I think what we'll do is, if you have questions, feel free to come up. We'll have people come up and do questions, but we can, students for the major event we've complete, but if we have a few audience questions, let's get to a few of those now. All right? Yeah, you wanted to do a question, yes? Okay. Go ahead. You want to hold the microphone? You got it?
I'm sure you people can hear me. I have a very short list of heroes in my little world. Very short. But that's my little brother over there. This is our dad, our father, wherever the hell you are. He was in the first group of troops that entered Berlin when the Second World War ended on May 7th of 1945.
Yeah, he also was in the unit that liberated the Dachau, the concentration camp.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you reminded me. They liberated a camp. He said you could smell it a mile away, a concentration camp. Anyway, I didn't learn a lot of this stuff till right before he died. He opened up and talked with me. I'm the oldest. This guy's about 14 years younger than me. So I have a very short, I've never been to war. I've never been in the service. My senior year at Redemptorist High School was started in 1953. I just turned 88, and this lovely lady here will be 86 this month. We're oldies but goodies. Anyway, I'm at his house one day after a Chiefs football game. We've done that quite a few times. We're Chiefs fans still. I'm wearing Chiefs stuff now. And he called me into his back room. I'll choke up here. He cried. And I said, what the hell's the matter with you? You're a tough guy. We are all tough guys, man. Come on. And he said, I heard from Doss. And I said, who the hell is Doss? Well, if you guys don't mind, I'll let my hero brother tell you about Doss, and now I'll sit down. Thank you.
Okay, Ronald Doss was the... When I got out in the jungle, I was assigned to a squad, a platoon and in a squad, and they said, you go down there and you reported to Ronald Doss. And by the way, he's a legend. Well, is that good or bad? I don't know. So anyhow, to make a long story short, he was a tall guy, and what made him look weird was, and a very mild voice, he had an earring on. And back in those days, even the men, civilians, didn't wear earrings. And I'm thinking, I'm in the Army, and this guy is wearing a friggin' earring, and it was a big earring. So as I'm talking to the other guys in the squad, they're saying, yeah, he is a legend. And that's why he gets to wear the earring, So after we've been out on a mission for a couple of weeks, and we're in jungle. And at night we set up, and it was kind of on a hill, not a giant hill. He was said somewhere between, some people call it like a mountain to us, in this area. But anyhow, that morning he wakes me up, Doss does, and he says, I want you to follow me, and I'm going to teach you something. Now, when we set up at night, there's no front lines. It ain't like World War II, the Germans are here, the Americans are here. You set up in a circle, because we're out in the jungle, and we're all going to guerrilla fight, and you don't know where they're going to come from, so you always set up in a circle. So he tells everybody else in the, we were platoon size at that time, he says, we're going outside the circle, all right? So just beware, you won't be able to see us, and we're going to come back this certain way, all right? So we go down, and at the bottom of that hill, there's a creek that runs through. And he says, I'm going to teach you something. He says, I think you can learn this, and I've been watching you. And he says, Okay, we came up this way, came out of the jungle there, the creek to go up the hill, and we came right up here. He goes, now the VC have been here too. And the VC, our jungle boots were all the same tread. The VC used Jeep tires and cut and made sandals out of it. So their track was always a tire tread, all right? And they lasted forever, the smarter on their part. So anyhow, we were looking at the creek. He says, now you can see, our tracks and you can see their tracks. Who was here first? He says, and it's important because we need to know if they're following us. So I'm looking, and I see the tracks, and I said, I don't know. He says, get down on your knees. I get down on my knees, and right where the water stopped, there's like wet mud and stuff. He says, these two tracks, they overlap. One of them overlaps. Look real close. And I look real close, and you can see just maybe a half an inch is overlapped. And he says, one is more damp than the other. So they followed us because you can tell that there's, it does that, right? So then he says, we came down this way, and in Vietnam there's stuff they call elephant grass, and it can get as tall as this pillar. And after a while, after it dries out and stuff, it falls down, and sometimes it falls down in rows. So anyhow, he takes me to where that started at, a giant field, and he says, what are these, because it looked like a trail, he said, and there was a V going like this. He said, one of these was just caused from getting old and fell down, and one of these, the VC did it when they were coming through. He says, look and see if you can tell which one. And I look at it and have no idea. He says, get down on your knees. I get down, and I'm doing this. He says, okay, so you're not going to figure it out. So he pulls one of them up from one trail, and he does the other one. And he holds them up to the sun. He says, if you look super close, and you had to look super close with the sun hitting you, he goes, you'll see that this one over here, there's only about 3 or 4 inches, and it's a little bit darker. You see that? And now I see it. It jumps out at me. I would have never saw it before. He goes, now this one over here, and he's holding up and he goes, you see any difference? No. He goes, that's the one they came through. They came from down that way because now the sun hit it, it's drying, and it changed the color of the deal. Now he went through, I'm not going to waste all of the time on this, 5 or 6 things just like that. It was amazing. I left there, he taught me how to smell stuff from far away that we all can do. You don't have to be Superman or nothing. Everybody can do this. And you think about it, it's like when a guy goes blind or something, they develop their smell, sound. They were always there, And he taught me how to smell rice cooking. Rice from a long way away, just by being stop, quiet, measure where the wind's coming from, check this way, check that way. And I left that hour-and-a-half session knowing more about myself, how to protect my troops, how to teach, all of this stuff, and then to teach somebody else like he taught me. That was Ronald Doss. This guy, like I said, he didn't talk real loud or anything, but we're on patrol, and we knew it was a bad area, and he and I were switching back and forth. And all of a sudden he stops, I'm right behind him, and he does this and stops, and he just starts yelling. I didn't even know he could yell at the top of his voice in Vietnamese. And one of the words that you learn to scream at the Vietnamese is "Chu Hoi," which means come out and surrender now, and we won't kill you. And if they come out, they come out. If not, you go and try and get them, right? All of a sudden he yells "Chu Hoi," which means he knows there's some out there. I didn't know they were there. Then he starts cussing them out in Vietnamese, yelling at the top of the lung. It was scary for me to hear. And sure enough, 3 or 4 of them come out, like this. He was a badass, even just yelling at people. So The officers always left him alone. When there was a mission coming up, the captain would come over to Doss with the other officers. What are we doing here? He'd put the map down, no GPS, put the map down, and they said, well, what we're going to do is, and he would explain it to them. So anyhow, Doss was a god. I had tried to get a hold of him. I had gotten a hold of almost everybody that I worked with via the internet, even back in the late 90s. You know, most of those guys were already on there. So when Bebo had came over, I had just gotten a hold of him. Nobody, and we'd all ask, anybody hear from Doss? Anybody? Nobody heard anything. He told me when he left a few months before I did, he said, I'm going out in the desert. He says, I love to hunt. And he says, I may be there 2 weeks, I may be there 10 years. And he meant that. I mean, he just, that's the way he was. Well, anyhow, he got a hold of me and we talked on the phone. And he could hardly talk anymore. I'm choking up now. He didn't have long to make it. He got cancer and all of that. Here I'm thinking, this was the guy that was my God. You know, I mean, this guy was Mr. Badass. And he taught me, and he saved my life, and he saved a lot of people's lives. And to hear him like this now, it tore me up. So anyhow, that's an answer to that question. Hopefully you learned something else about what soldiers do and how they adapt and pass it on.
Thank you for that, Joe. Yeah. That's also a great example of how, right, in an event like this, we don't have time to get into all the stories, right? So that's why we're super grateful to Gene that he recorded individual oral histories with each of these folks where they could get into more of their own stories. And we will be posting this video and this event on the JCCC YouTube channel, and you can see a lot of our other veterans oral histories, the panels, and their individual interviews on that site. And I know, Gene, you'll be posting yours as well.
Yeah, and I just want to say that the film you saw are just snippets of the interviews that we did, and our hope is that we will have these archived, the full interviews, so that people, family members and others who are interested can really get the full depth of the interviews and the stories in their own words that these heroes have shared with us. So I want to thank them, and I want to thank all of you for being here, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide these for future generations.
Great. So thank you all for coming. Let's give one more round of applause.